You're standing at the sink late at night, scrolling through your phone with one hand and rinsing a plate with the other. A text pops up, "Hey, can you help me out this weekend?" It'd mean a lot. You already told this person no twice this week. Your stomach tightens, your jaw clenches, and you can feel the familiar mix of guilt and anger starting to roll through your body as you stare at the screen, wondering how you got here again. Here's the quiet truth: some people only listen when you explode, and some people barely listen even then. You've learned that saying no once doesn't seem to count unless you write an essay explaining yourself, raise your voice, or finally shut down completely. What if that's not because you're bad at boundaries, but because no one ever showed you how to hold one calmly, consistently, and without apologizing for existing? You know the pain already. You say yes to extra shifts at work because your boss phrases it like a favor and you don't want to look difficult. You stay on the phone with a draining friend long after you want to be in bed because hanging up feels mean. You loan money you really can't spare because you'd rather be anxious about your bank app than deal with the discomfort of them being upset with you. And every time you override your own no, you pay for it later in resentment, overthinking, and the sense that other people's wants somehow matter more than your limits. If nothing changes, you keep losing your time, your sleep, and little pieces of your self-respect, one small compromise at a time. In this lesson, we're going to change that. By the end, you'll know how to repeat a boundary without getting dragged into endless arguments. You'll have exact sentences you can use with pushy bosses, parents, partners, or friends when they pretend not to hear you. And you'll know how to protect your energy in real-life situations, not just in theory, so you feel less trapped and more in charge when someone keeps pushing. Educational content inspired by classical Stoic texts. Not medical, psychological, or legal advice. If you want steady Stoic focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships every week, this is the channel for you. Stay with me until the very end, and while you're here, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Think of this as training your nervous system to respond differently. First, we're going to pull apart one big myth about boundaries, the idea that you owe everyone a long explanation and that a no doesn't count unless they agree with it. Next, we'll look at how to create space before you answer, so you're not replying from panic or guilt at the moment. Then, you'll learn the broken record boundary, a way of repeating yourself calmly instead of getting dragged into a debate. After that, we'll talk about consequences and follow-through, so your no isn't just a suggestion people can step over. Finally, we'll bring everything together in a real-life story, where you handle a Friday night situation in a completely new way and actually get to keep your evening. So as you listen, imagine one person in your life who never seems to hear no the first time. In a bit, we'll walk through a Friday night invitation from that kind of person, and you'll watch yourself calmly hold your line instead of ending the night angry, drained, and wondering why you didn't listen to yourself again. Let's start with the core move that changes almost everything, treating no like a complete sentence, not the start of a courtroom defense. For years, you may have been trained to soften every limit. No, unless you really need me. No, but maybe I can move things around. No, I'm just tired. Sorry. The change you're making now is simple to say and uncomfortable to practice. You decide that your boundary doesn't require the other person's approval to be valid. You still get to be kind, but you stop auditioning for the role of reasonable person every time you don't want to do something. If you never make this shift, you stay trapped in a pattern where people learn that pushing you equals more access, more explanations, and sometimes even a yes after a little pressure. Why does this matter so much? Because people learn from what you do after they push, not from what you say the first time. When you pay your no with long explanations, you give them places to argue. When you apologize for having limits, you act like your needs are a problem to fix. From a Stoic angle, you're letting your peace depend on someone else's reaction instead of on your own decision. When you start treating your no as something you can stand on, calmly and quietly, you're shifting your identity from someone who tries to make everyone happy to someone who respects their own time and energy. That shift doesn't make you harsh, it makes you trustworthy, including to yourself. Here's one line you can start practicing: I'm not available for that. That's it. You can adjust the tone depending on the situation. I'm not available for that this weekend. I'm not available for calls after 10. I'm not available to lend money right now. If you want a softer version, you can add, I appreciate you asking, but you don't add a long backstory or a dozen excuses. Picture this in a simple North American moment. Your coworker messages you on Slack at 4:45 p.m. on a Friday. Hey, can you look over this deck before the end of day? Client called Monday. I'd feel better with your eyes on it. You've already promised yourself you're shutting your laptop at 5 because you've got a long commute and you want one evening that doesn't bleed into work. Old pattern. You feel that familiar squeeze in your chest. You type, yeah, sure, send it over, and then you spend an extra 45 minutes fixing slides while your dinner plans get more rushed. You're annoyed at them, but you're really annoyed at yourself. New pattern. You see the message, you take one slow breath, and you type, I'm not available for that today. I can take a look on Monday morning. They may send a question mark emoji or really need this today follow-up. Instead of sliding into a full explanation of your commute, your mental health, your whole backstory, you stay with the line. I get that it's important. I'm not available today. You're not rude, you're clear. They might be frustrated at the moment. They might ask someone else or adjust the deck themselves. But later that night, instead of staring at Netflix with resentment buzzing under your skin, you're actually resting because you honored the line you set. Your tiny action today is simple. Write down one I'm not available for that sentence that fits your real life and keep it somewhere visible. Maybe it's on a note in your phone, maybe it's on a sticky note near your laptop. Use it once this week in a low-stakes situation, even if your voice shakes a little. Right now, let your body practice this. Take a slow breath in through your nose, hold it for a moment, and let it out through your mouth. Then quietly say, out loud if you can, I'm not available for that. Say it once more, a little slower, and notice what comes up in your chest and your stomach. You're not arguing with anyone yet, you're just letting your nervous system get used to the idea that you're allowed to have limits without a full courtroom speech. Hold on to this one line, because later, when that Friday night invite shows up, it's going to be the sentence that keeps your whole evening from getting hijacked. Another crucial move is changing when you respond, not just what you say. One of the reasons pushy people get their way is timing. They catch you when you're tired, guilty, or rushed, and you respond from that first spike of pressure. You fire off a sure, I can make it work, before your calmer brain has even checked the calendar. The shift you're making is to build in a pause by default. You stop treating every request as an emergency that needs an instant yes or no, and you start using a standard delay line. If you never do this, your boundaries will always be at the mercy of your worst 5 seconds, not your considered judgment. This works because urgency is often manufactured. The other person's anxiety, disorganization, or entitlement shows up as a need that you feel responsible to fix on the spot. When you delay your answer, even by a few hours, you give your nervous system time to settle and your values time to speak. It's a very stoic move. You're refusing to act while your mind is clouded. You also subtly retrain people around you. They learn that access to your time and energy does not come on demand. It comes after you've actually checked in with yourself. Over time, this can change how they approach you and whether they even attempt certain last-minute requests. The exact line you can use is this: I've seen your message. I'll think about it and get back to you tomorrow. Variations work too. Let me look at my schedule, I'll let you know later today. I need some time to think about that. I'll get back to you by noon. The key is that you aren't giving a yes or a no yet, you're giving a clear response window. Imagine you're at home on a Tuesday night and your phone buzzes. It's your sibling. Can you watch the kids on Saturday? I know it's last minute, but you're the only one I trust. Immediately, you feel that old mix of obligation and frustration. You'd plan to have a quiet weekend after a brutal week at work. Old pattern, your thumbs move faster than your brain. Yeah, I'll figure it out. You spend the rest of the week resentful and exhausted before Saturday even arrives. New pattern, you read the message, you feel that pull, and instead of answering from the pull, you breathe. Your reply, I've seen your message. I'll think about it and get back to you tomorrow. They might send a crying emoji or a please, I really need to know, but you've already set the frame. You don't answer those follow-ups tonight. The next day, when you're clearer, you decide, maybe this time you can help for a specific window, or maybe you can't. Either way, your yes or no comes from a rested mind, not from panic. Your tiny action here is to choose one default delay window for emotional requests. It might be I'll get back to you tomorrow, or I'll get back to you in an hour, depending on the situation. The point is that you have that sentence ready to go, instead of falling into silence or instant agreement. Use it once this week with a text, email, or DM that tugs at your guilt. Take a moment now to practice this pause. Sit however you're sitting, and think of one person in your life whose messages spike your anxiety. Picture their name lighting up your screen. Feel that mini surge in your chest. Then imagine yourself typing, "I've seen your message. I'll think about it and get back to you tomorrow." Let that sentence land in your body. You're not ghosting them, you're protecting your right to make decisions from a calmer place. In a little while, when we get to that Friday night story, this delayed move will be the difference between another hijacked evening and one you actually get to keep. Now we add another layer, repeating your boundary calmly instead of getting dragged into a debate. Many people who don't respect limits rely on the fact that you'll eventually crack if they argue long enough. They ask, you say no, they keep asking, and somewhere around round 3, you offer a compromise you never wanted in the first place. The change you're making is to stop treating your boundary like the opening move in a negotiation. You say it clearly, and if they push, you repeat it in slightly different words, without adding fresh explanations. If you skip this, every no becomes an invitation for a long back and forth where they control the tempo and you walk away exhausted. This works because arguments feed on new material. Every extra excuse you add is another branch they can attack. I can't because I'm tired. Well, you can rest on Sunday. I can't because I already have plans. Can't you move them? When you stay with the same core sentence, you're not rude, you're just refusing to provide fresh fuel. In Stoic terms, you're choosing to direct your energy toward what you can control, your own clarity and tone, rather than trying to control their reaction by over-explaining. This is how a calmer, more focused version of you responds instead of reacting. Here's a simple microscript, I hear you. My answer is still no. You can adjust it. I get that this matters to you. My answer is still no. I understand you're disappointed. My answer is still no. Notice how it acknowledges their feeling without moving your line. Let's put this into a North American scene. You're sitting at a friend's apartment in Toronto or Chicago, and you've just finished dinner. Someone suggests going out for drinks. You've got an early morning and you promised yourself you'd leave by 10. You say, I'm going to head home after this. I've got an early start tomorrow. One friend immediately responds, come on, you always say that. Just stay for one. Old pattern, you start explaining. Yeah, I know, it's just been a long week, and I've got this early meeting, and my sleep's been off, and they interrupt, you worry too much. Live a little. 10 minutes later, you're at a loud bar, annoyed with yourself. New pattern, same moment, same pressure. Friend says, come on, just stay for one, you always say that. You take a small breath and say, I hear you. My answer is still no. They roll their eyes. You're so boring now. You feel the sting, and part of you wants to prove you're fun. Instead, you stay with your line. I get that you want me to stay. I'm heading out. You stand up, you hug who you want to hug, and you leave. The conversation is shorter, not longer. On the way home, there's a mix of relief and discomfort, but you're on your own side. Your tiny action is to choose one person in your life to practice the broken record with in a small way. It might be a coworker who always wants to talk after you've said you're logging off, or a friend who keeps pushing you to share details you're not ready to share. The next time they push after your first no, repeat your boundary once instead of adding a new explanation. Right now, let's give your body a preview. Think of someone who usually wears you down. Picture their face or their username. Hear them saying, "But why not? It's not that big a deal." Let your shoulders soften a little, unclench your jaw if it's tight, and say quietly, "I hear you. My answer is still no." Then say it again, a little slower, "I get that you're disappointed. My answer is still no." You're practicing making their emotion theirs, and your decision yours. In a bit, when that Friday night text comes in, this is the muscle you'll use to stay steady. At some point, a boundary isn't just words, it's what happens when the line keeps getting crossed. If someone constantly ignores your no, calmly or not, you eventually have to pair your words with a consequence. The shift here is from "please stop doing that" to "if you keep doing that, here's what I'll do." You're not punishing them, you're protecting yourself. Without this step, people who push hard learn that your no is mostly emotional noise, not something that leads to actual changes in access, time, or information. This works because consequences are how you teach people what it actually means when you set a limit. Telling someone, "I don't like when you talk to me that way," is a start. Saying, "If you keep talking to me that way, I'm ending the conversation," and then actually ending it if they continue, sends a different message. Epictetus reminded his students to focus on what's in their control. You can't control their character, but you can control whether you stay on that phone call, reply to those texts, or show up to that invite. Over time, consistent follow-through is far more powerful than any speech you can give. A clear microscript here is, if this continues, I'm going to step back. You can make it specific. If you keep raising your voice, I'm going to end this call. If you keep bringing this up after I've said no, I'm going to stop responding to messages about it. The key is that you're naming your action, not threatening some vague disaster. Picture a North American family situation. You're at your parents' place on a Sunday afternoon. You've already told your mom you're not discussing your dating life anymore. It always turns into a lecture that leaves you feeling 12 years old. 15 minutes into the visit, she starts. "So, are you seeing anyone?" You know you're not getting younger. Old pattern, you try to redirect, you joke, you defend your life choices, and by the time you leave, you're exhausted and irritated. New pattern, she starts in with the questions. You say, "Mom, I'm not discussing my dating life." She laughs it off. "Oh, relax, I'm just asking." 2 minutes later, she's back at it. This time, you calmly add the consequence. "If this continues, I'm going to step back from these visits for a while." She may accuse you of being dramatic. You stay steady. "I'm serious. I'm not willing to keep having the same conversation." If she continues anyway, you shorten the visit. Next weekend, maybe you don't go, or you meet in a more neutral setting for a shorter time. You're not cutting her off from your life, you're cutting off that particular pattern. Your tiny action, choose one small, realistic consequence you're willing to follow through on in one relationship. It might be ending a call when someone starts yelling. It might be taking a break from responding to late-night texts. It might be declining invitations for a month if a person keeps mocking your boundaries. Write it down and, if the pattern shows up this week, act on it once. Take a moment to feel this in your body. Think of a situation where you've said, "I don't like this," and nothing changed. Imagine yourself calmly saying, "If this continues, I'm going to step back." Then picture yourself actually stepping back, hanging up, leaving, and not replying. Notice any fear or guilt that arises, and notice also the tiny sliver of relief at the idea that you don't have to stay in every conversation that hurts you. When we get to our Friday night story later, this willingness to act on your own words is what turns theory into real protection. There's another kind of boundary that often gets ignored, the boundary around your time and energy before anyone even asks for something. You can think of this as pre-deciding your limits instead of improvising them on the spot. Instead of waiting until you're exhausted to realize you've overcommit, you set simple rules like no work emails after a certain hour, no surprise drop-ins, or no serious conversations when you're already burned out. If you don't do this, you end up trying to draw lines in the middle of the storm, which is exactly when you're least likely to hold them. This works because decision fatigue is real. The more you have to negotiate with yourself in the moment, the more likely you are to cave to pressure or guilt. When you pre-decide, you give your future self an anchor. As Marcus notes in his meditations, having clear principles ahead of time makes it easier to act with consistency when you're under stress. You're essentially saying, I've already had this conversation with myself, I'm just following through now. A microscript here could be, I don't make decisions about that at this time. For example, I don't make decisions about extra projects on Fridays. I don't talk about serious relationship stuff after midnight. I don't say yes to money requests on the spot. Picture a North American evening. You're home from work, you've eaten, and you're finally on the couch with a show you like. Your phone buzzes. It's your manager emailing from their own couch. Quick thing, can you jump on a call about the deck? Old pattern, even though this is technically after hours, you feel like you have to prove you're a team player, so you say, sure, give me 10. 30 minutes later, you're deep in a screen share, sleep is pushed back, and Monday morning already feels heavier. New pattern, you've decided in advance that you don't take work calls after 8. When the email comes in, you feel that old urge to be helpful. You remember your rule and reply, I'm offline for the night. I can talk through this tomorrow morning between 9 and 10. You may worry about how they'll see you, but you've already chosen to value your rest. Over time, if you're consistent, many people adjust. Some won't like it. That doesn't mean you're wrong for needing the boundary. Your tiny action today is to set one predecision around your time. Keep it simple and clear. Maybe it's no checking work email after 9, or no heavy conversations via text after midnight, or no yes to money requests without at least 24 hours. Write it somewhere you'll actually see tonight. Then, when the moment comes, let that decision make the choice for you. Right now, give yourself a small practice moment. Think of one type of request that always seems to arrive when you're tired: late-night texts, last-minute favors, weekend shifts. Say quietly, I don't make decisions about that at this time. Then picture yourself seeing that message and replying from your predecision, not from your fatigue. You're teaching your nervous system that you're allowed to design how people access you, not just react to their timing. That design will matter when your phone lights up on that Friday night. So far, we've talked about what you say and when you say it. Now we need to talk about what you carry. One of the hardest parts of dealing with people who ignore your no is that you start to feel responsible for their reactions. You say no and they sigh, sulk, or get sarcastic, and suddenly you feel like you've committed a crime. The change you're making here is an internal boundary, separating your decision from their feelings about your decision. If you skip this, even your strongest no will feel shaky, because the moment someone looks disappointed, you'll feel compelled to fix it. This works because emotional fusion, taking on other people's moods as your job, keeps you hooked into their approval. When you can notice their reaction without immediately moving to manage it, you give yourself space to stay rooted in your choice. It's not about becoming cold or uncaring. It's about recognizing that adulthood means other people are allowed to have feelings, and you're allowed to have limits, and both can exist at the same time. Seneca wrote about how easily we hand over our time to others. The same is true for our peace. You're learning not to hand it over so quickly. A self-directed script you can use is, their feelings are theirs, my boundary is mine. When you feel that wave of guilt, you can add, it's okay if they're disappointed. I'm still allowed to say no. Imagine a relationship scene. You're dating someone, and they invite you to a big social event with their friends. You've had a brutal week and you know that a loud bar is going to drain you more than it will help. You say, I'm going to sit this one out tonight. I need a quiet evening. They respond, wow. I was really counting on you to be there. It's important to me. Old pattern, you immediately override your needs. Okay, fine, I'll come for a little bit. You spend the night forcing smiles and spend the next day in a fog. New pattern, same invite, same response from them. You feel the guilt rise. For a moment, your brain starts generating self-attacks. You're selfish, you never show up, this is why people leave. You take a breath and silently say to yourself, their feelings are theirs, my boundary is mine. Out loud, you might say, I get that you're disappointed. I'm not up for it tonight. They may stay upset. You don't rush to fix it by sacrificing your well-being. Later, you can show up in other ways, but tonight, you let your no stand. Your tiny action is to practice this internal line once this week when someone reacts badly to a small boundary. It might not even be about you saying no. Maybe someone at work is clearly in a bad mood and you feel tempted to overfunction to cheer them up. In that moment, think, their feelings are theirs, my boundary is mine, and choose one small thing that protects your energy, like not taking on extra tasks just because they're sighing loudly. Take a slow practice moment now. Bring to mind someone whose disappointment hits you hard. Imagine yourself saying no to them about something small. See their face fall or hear their annoyed tone. Feel what that does in your body. Then, inside your mind or quietly out loud, say, their feelings are theirs, my boundary is mine. Breathe in, hold, and out. You're not becoming uncaring. You're learning that you can be compassionate without sacrificing yourself every time someone doesn't get what they want. This inner boundary will be crucial when the Friday night situation we've been talking about finally arrives. Now let's talk about power dynamics, because not all boundaries are with peers. Sometimes the person who doesn't hear your no signs your paycheck, shares your home, or has authority you can't just walk away from. In those situations, the goal isn't always a clean, simple refusal. The change you're making is moving from helpless compliance to strategic clarity. You stop assuming that your only choices are say yes or get fired, and you start looking for what you can control inside the constraints. If you don't do this, you'll either burn yourself out trying to be endlessly accommodating or sabotage your own future with impulsive blow-ups. This works because boundaries with power above you often look different than boundaries with someone you can easily distance yourself from. You may need to negotiate, to document, or to involve systems like HR instead of relying only on direct confrontation. You might not always get the outcome you want, but you can still reclaim some agency. You can define what you're willing to do, how often, and under what conditions. You can also decide in advance what would push you to look for a different job or a different living situation, so you're not stuck for years in a setup that's slowly crushing you. A microscript that fits many of these situations is, here's what I can do. Instead of a flat no that might not be safe at the moment, you name your limits within the request. I can stay late tonight, but not more than an hour. I can help with this project, but I can't own the whole thing. I can talk about this now for 15 minutes, after that I need to log off. Picture a workplace scene. You're in a North American office or working remotely for a company based in a big city. Your manager has a habit of dropping new tasks on you right before the end of the day. Today, at 4:50 p.m., they message you, we need this report updated before tomorrow morning. Can you get it done tonight? Old pattern. You worry that any resistance will mark you as difficult. You say, sure, and end up working late into the night, again. Your personal life shrinks around your job. New pattern, you still care about your work, and you're aware of the power imbalance. You respond, here's what I can do. I can update sections 1 and 2 tonight and have the rest done by noon tomorrow. They might push, we really need the whole thing. You can reply, given my current workload, that's what I can realistically deliver with quality. If something else needs to be deprioritized, let me know. You're not combative, you're clear about your capacity. Over time, if this pattern continues, you might also start documenting these exchanges and considering whether this environment is sustainable. That choice is still yours. Your tiny action here is to pick one area with a power imbalance, work, housing, family, and draft one here's what I can do sentence you'd be willing to say. You don't have to use it today, but write it down so your brain knows it has more options than yes or disaster. Take a moment to breathe into this. Think of a situation where you feel you have less power. Maybe it's your job, maybe it's a shared living space, maybe it's a family relationship with strings attached. Picture the next request coming in. Instead of freezing or instantly agreeing, imagine yourself saying, here's what I can do, and naming something that protects at least part of your time or energy. Feel the difference between total surrender and partial agency. You're not solving the entire structure today, but you're reclaiming a piece of your own power inside it. That piece will matter when our Friday night story puts you under pressure from someone who's used to calling the shots. You've now got several tools: I'm not available for that, the pause before replying, the broken record, the consequence, the pre-decided limits, the internal line about their feelings, and the strategic here's what I can do. Before we put them together, we need one more piece: repairing with yourself after you hold a boundary. Because the truth is, even when you do all of this right, it can still feel bad. Your nervous system is used to peacekeeping through self-sacrifice. When you stop doing that, it will protest. The change you're making is learning to comfort yourself after you hold a line instead of abandoning yourself by calling yourself selfish or cold. If you skip this, you'll keep boomeranging back into overgiving just to get rid of the discomfort. This works because human beings are wired for belonging. When someone is angry or disappointed with you, your body often reads that as danger. Your heart rate goes up, your thoughts race, and you may start reaching for old stories: I'm too much, I'm ungrateful, I'm impossible to love. If you don't actively counter those stories, they'll drag you back into patterns that hurt you. When you deliberately talk to yourself with respect after you hold a boundary, you're rewiring the association. Instead of "I set a limit and now I'm a bad person," it becomes "I set a limit and now I take care of myself." A self-script you can use is, I'm proud of myself for respecting my limits, even if it feels uncomfortable right now. You can also add, feeling guilty doesn't mean I'm wrong. Imagine you've just ended a call with a friend who wanted you to come over and help them with something big: packing, emotional labor, a crisis they've had many times. You said, I'm not available for that tonight, and they responded with silence or a chilly, okay, whatever. After the call, the silence feels loud. Old pattern, you spiral. You replay the conversation, you imagine them venting about you to other people, and you start drafting a long apology text. New pattern, you still feel that guilt rising. You notice your stomach twisting, your mind reaching for self-criticism. Instead of following it down, you sit on the edge of your bed, put a hand on your chest or your belly, and say quietly, I'm proud of myself for respecting my limits, even if it feels uncomfortable right now. You might say it again, feeling guilty doesn't mean I'm wrong. You take 2 or 3 slow breaths. You remind yourself of the bigger picture: you've been running on empty, you've helped many times before, and you're allowed to rest. The guilt may not disappear right away, but you're not feeding it with self-hate. Your tiny action is to plan a small self-respect ritual for after you hold a boundary. It could be making a cup of tea, taking a short walk, journaling one sentence about why that boundary mattered, or simply placing your hand on your chest and saying, I'm proud of you, to yourself. The next time you say no, follow it with that ritual instead of doom scrolling or mentally attacking yourself. Take this moment now as practice. Think of a recent time when you did manage to say no, even if it was small. Maybe you declined a meeting, a call, a favor. Bring that moment to mind. Notice how you talk to yourself afterward. Then, right now, say quietly, I'm proud of myself for respecting my limits, even if it felt uncomfortable. Let that sentence land. Breathe. This is the part that makes your new boundaries sustainable, so when we step into that Friday night story next, you're not just able to hold your line, you're able to live with it afterward. Now let's step into that Friday night. You've had a long week. Work has been heavy, your sleep has been patchy, and you've promised yourself that tonight, you're going to keep things simple: easy dinner, maybe a show, early bed. It's just getting dark outside. You're halfway through cooking when your phone lights up on the counter. It's that friend who always assumes you'll say yes, the one who rarely hears your first no. The message reads, hey, last-minute thing, but can you come over and help me set up for this party? Everyone bailed, I really need you. Your chest tightens. Old habits stir. You picture yourself over there, moving furniture, hanging lights, making small talk with people you don't really know, getting home late, and waking up tomorrow already drained. You also picture their disappointed reaction if you say no. For a second, you're frozen over the cutting board, knife in hand, phone buzzing. This is the edge where your old story and your new tools meet. You remember the pause. You wipe your hands, pick up your phone, and instead of firing off a reply, you breathe. You let the first wave of guilt and pressure pass like a small weather front. Then you type, "I've seen your message. I'll think about it and get back to you in a bit." You hit send and put the phone face down. Already, you've done something different. You've bought yourself time. You finish cooking, you sit down to eat, and you let your shoulders drop a little. While you eat, you think through what you actually want tonight. Not what would avoid the most conflict, but what would genuinely leave you less exhausted. The answer is clear. You need the night at home. 20 minutes later, you pick up your phone again. There are a couple of follow-up texts. "Please don't leave me hanging. Everyone else said no." Normally, this would be the point where you cave. This time, you remember your sentence. "I'm not available for that tonight." You type, "I get that you're stressed. I'm not available for that tonight." You hit send. Almost immediately, 3 dots appear. Seriously? You're just gonna chill while I do all this alone? The heat rises in your face. Old reaction, you'd start explaining. "I've just been so tired, and I had this week, and next week is crazy," and you catch yourself. You use the broken record instead. "I hear you. My answer is still no." You send it and put the phone down again. There's a longer pause now. Then, wow. "Okay. I see how it is." That line lands hard. Your stomach flips, your mind starts its familiar guilt monologue. You're a bad friend. They're never going to ask you again. You should just go. Your thumb hovers over the keyboard, ready to type, "Fine, I'll come for a little while." This is the turning point. You stop. You sit back on the couch, place your phone beside you, and put a hand on your chest. Quietly, you say, "Their feelings are theirs, my boundary is mine." You take a long breath in, hold it, and let it out slowly. Then you add, "I'm proud of myself for respecting my limits, even if it feels uncomfortable right now." You feel the mix of guilt and relief fighting it out in your chest. You don't send another message. A few minutes later, another text comes in. You glance at it. "Whatever. Have a good night." It stings, but it's not the end of the world. You decide there's nothing that needs a reply right now. You turn your ringer down, you pick up your plate, and you consciously re-enter your evening. You put on the show you'd planned to watch, or you pick up a book, or you call someone else who respects your time. At some point, you might message your friend the next day and say, "Hope the party went well." You can care about them without undoing your boundaries. The outcome is simple and big at the same time. You go to bed earlier. You wake up more rested. Your Saturday doesn't start with a resentment hangover. You've also sent a quiet signal into that friendship. You're no longer the automatic yes. Maybe they adjust over time, maybe they don't. Either way, you've just lived through a full cycle of setting a boundary, holding it through pushback, feeling the guilt, and staying on your own side. That's what all the earlier tools were training you for. And the more you walk through nights like this, the less dramatic it feels. It just becomes the way you live. What you've really been doing in this lesson is shifting from a life where your boundaries only hold when you're at your breaking point to a life where your limits are clear, calm, and consistent. It's the difference between reacting from panic or guilt and responding from a grounded sense of what you can actually give. Instead of letting other people's urgency and disappointment drive your choices, you're learning to let your own values and energy levels lead. First, you step into that familiar moment where someone texts you yet again, asking for more of you than you actually have, and you see what it costs when your no never really lands. You named the stakes: lost time, lost sleep, and that slow erosion of self-respect. Then we started rebuilding from the ground up by treating no like a complete sentence. You practiced saying, "I'm not available for that," without writing an essay or apologizing for needing rest. Next, you learned to build in a pause, using lines like, "I've seen your message. I'll think about it and get back to you tomorrow," so your decisions come from a calmer mind instead of the first spike of pressure. After that, You picked up the broken record, I hear you. My answer is still no. You saw how repeating yourself calmly keeps you out of endless debates and arguments that only exist to wear you down. We added consequences, the moment where you stop at please stop, and move into if this continues, I'm going to step back, and you see how actually following through teaches people what your limits really mean. We also worked on pre-deciding your boundaries, rules about when you take calls, when you read email, when you make decisions, so you're not trying to invent limits in the middle of the storm. Then we shifted inside, setting emotional boundaries with ourselves. You practice telling yourself, their feelings are theirs, my boundary is mine, so that someone else's disappointment doesn't automatically mean you're wrong. With power dynamics, you learned that sometimes the safest, most honest boundary is, here's what I can do, especially with bosses or authority figures, and that you can still reclaim agency inside imperfect systems. You rounded it out by learning how to repair yourself afterward, saying, I'm proud of myself for respecting my limits, even if it feels uncomfortable right now, so guilt doesn't drive you back into overgiving. Finally, we walked through that Friday night story, where all of these pieces came together and you actually kept your evening instead of surrendering it to someone else's last-minute needs. There are 3 concrete things you can do today to lock this in. First, choose one sentence that will be your go-to-know for the next week, something like, I'm not available for that tonight, and use it once in a real conversation, even if your voice shakes a little. Second, set one pre-decision around your time, like no checking work email after 9, and keep it for just the next 24 hours so your body gets a taste of what it feels like when you honor your own rules. Third, the next time someone reacts badly to a small boundary, take 10 seconds alone and say to yourself, their feelings are theirs, my boundary is mine, and notice how it feels to stay on your own side instead of rushing to fix everything. If this resonated, the natural next step is to go deeper into how you handle conflict once your boundaries are in place, those conversations where you're not just saying no, but trying to repair, negotiate, or rebuild trust without abandoning yourself. Think of a lesson on something like how to stay calm when arguments turn personal, where you learn how to respond when people move from your behavior to attacking your character. That's where these boundaries meet real-world conflict and become a way of strengthening relationships instead of ending them. If you want a whole library of Stoic Focus lessons on emotional control, boundaries, and relationships, this is what we do here every week. If you feel messages like this need to reach more people, hit like, tap subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments.